Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports and Metal Podcast. We are your hosts. This is Aaron Savage. With me, as always, my partner in crime, Mr. Jason Voorhees.
Yeah, man, what's going on?
Not much, man. We have a very special guest this week, Mr. Phil Stifle from the All About the Birds podcast. He's one of the hosts, along with Johnny Uleka, Jeff Warner, and Chip Keegi. I hope I pronounced those names correctly.
You're pretty close enough.
Cool. And welcome to the show, Phil. What's going on?
Hey, I'm super excited to be on this show. And anytime you can have a show that combines sports and music, dude, I'm in. When he asked me to be on the show, Jason, I'm like, absolutely.
Awesome. So why don't you tell us a little about yourself, Phil? Obviously, you're an Eagles fan. We know that.
Hey,
As Jay is.
I'm a Philly sports fan. I love sports. I do the All About the Birds podcast with my team. You know, we've been doing it for just under a year now. We do, obviously our Eagles podcast every Wednesday night live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, AAT Birds. That's where you find it and all. But we do all sports. We've got Chip does a show talking basketball and baseball. I do a golf show. Johnny does a show talking about the NFL draft. So we talk a little bit of everything, and we're trying to expand that to even more because we're not just Eagles fans. We're sports fans.
As we are. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. What kind of music you into, Phil?
I'm into all music. I started playing piano and keyboard when I was 4 years old. I've played a little bit of the drums, a little bit of the guitar, a little bit of the saxophone. So I've got a lot of musical background. I even was a music major for like 1 week. I just couldn't keep up with it and all. So, it didn't last very long in college. But I do rock and roll. My dad instilled a value in me I love rock and roll, but you need to learn to appreciate every single style of music. So if you were a country fan and you wanted to talk country, I could hold my own in a country conversation because I appreciate what they do. I could talk classical music. I could talk old school Motown. I like to appreciate all genres of music, all up and down. And I've seen concerts from pretty much every genre of music as well.
That's all. I'm the same way. I know I'm on the Sports and Metal podcast, but Jay will tell you, I'm into like Bob Seger, Michael Jackson, guilty pleasures like Madonna. Jay will tell you I could sit on the porch drinking beers and listen to country music. Obviously, I love metal, but I love it all.
I've got the Sirius XM in my car, and I don't know if you guys have XM or not. You can set alerts for different, songs or musicians when they pop up. It tells you, hey, on this channel, this musician's playing. Do you want to go to it? If you look at the 20 alerts in my car, you will see Tupac, Eminem, Smokey Robinson, Van Morrison, Aerosmith. The list goes on and on. There's literally somebody from every genre on an alert in my car right now.
That's friggin' awesome. That is awesome.
Well, we got to ask, though, since it's sports and metal, what's your favorite metal band?
Oh, I don't know. I've seen so many. I don't know if there's any metal band that's my favorite. I love them all. I go more to like I don't really consider, I guess Metallica and Guns N' Roses, they're kind of metal. I kind of consider them more rock and roll than metal to an extent.
Well, newer Metallica, certainly. But I'm the same way, and that's why I always say you're home for all things hard rock and heavy metal, kind of like Eddie Trunk. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not just a heavy metal guy. I'm a rock and roll hard rock guy, and I hate being pigeonholed.
Yeah, I really do. If you can ask me who my favorite musician, period, is, and I would struggle to tell you because I don't want to leave anybody out. I will say if you're into you guys are a little older like me, right? You're not babies like the guys I do the All About the Bird show with. I was big into the local, Philly rock and metal scene in like the late 90s, early 2000s. I was a huge fan. I don't know if you guys remember Octane.
I remember Octane. Yeah.
Octane, I went to every single show every Friday and Saturday night, no matter what bar they were playing at in Philly, or if they were down the shore, I was driving down the shore to see every one of their shows. They were probably not just the best cover band of metal music, but their original music was fantastic with the original crew, Brian Bortnick and company back in the late 90s, early 2000s. They were amazing.
Awesome.
It's funny because so earlier today I put out a tweet, and I think I kind of surprised Aaron because I'm generally the opposite. in my music tastes. I like it all, but I'm more, if I had to say what I prefer, Aaron has always said that I'm like the heavy guy.
Yeah, Jay's
I'm the guy
definitely
that
more the heavy guy.
prefers
I'm more the diverse.
the heavier, style of music. Now, don't get me wrong. If I hear a good country song on the radio, I'll listen to it. But it's obviously not my flavor.
I'm not saying country is not my favorite either. It's definitely not. But so a funny story. So I spent 2 years DJing on a cruise ship when I was younger, and I used to have to I used to have to DJ country music night and teach country music line dancing. And I'm a kid from Delaware County. I didn't even know one country song, let alone a country music line dance. And let me tell you, after 2 years, I could do every single country line dance there was and figure out what to play for a room, to keep them dancing and stuff. So don't like it, but I understand it and I appreciate it.
Well, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. But so earlier today, I was like, I just got to thinking, and I'm like, you know what? It's Throwback Thursday. And I was thinking, what would be your Mount Rushmore if you had to choose, your top 4 songs from the 80s genre of music? Could be any style. Doesn't have to be metal. Could be anything. What would your 4 be?
Man, I knew you were going to say this. I knew you were going to ask this question. I wanted to do research so I don't leave anybody out.
Okay.
I'm kind of Google searching it as we go right now.
It's all good, man.
Dude, I'm trying to figure, I played this song in so many, when I was DJing and doing different things in college. Bon Jovi, Living on a Prayer would definitely be on it, most likely. And, I know you put one of the Prince songs on your list. I think he would I think that and the Journey song, Don't Stop Believing, I think they would fall a little short. I'm trying to figure out which one it is right now. Hold on. Definitely.
When Doves Cry?
What's that?
When Doves Cry?
No, I'm looking as a piano player. I will say I'm a Billy Joel guy at heart, and I'm trying to think. Was it the Stranger album that came out in the 80s? I believe it was the Stranger album. Hold on. It's the main album from the 80s that Billy Joel.
Aaron should know. He likes Billy Joel.
Glass House album. Anything from the Glass House album, that Billy Joel put out in the 80s would definitely be on my Mount Rushmore. Billy Joel doing that, obviously Bon Jovi. Van Halen. Wasn't Jump in the 80s,
Of course.
I mean, again, I was born in 1980, so the mid-80s, I was a kid. Listened to my older brother playing these songs, so I might not remember them all. But, yeah, I knew you were going to ask this question.
All right. Well, off of what you guys just said, I hadn't really thought about it earlier today. I didn't see your tweet, Jay. I was busy. But you guys just got me thinking. If I had to give my Mount Rushmore of 80s songs, not just metal songs, like 80s songs, I guess I have to define a parameter because there's so many that you could choose from. So if I'm going to define a parameter, I think I'm going to make it songs that if you walked into a bar at any given night, any given time, any given place, that song is going to be played in that bar every night, basically, and everybody in the bar is going to sing along to it. I'm going to define that as my parameter, and I have 3 right off the bat, and you guys already mentioned 2 of them. Don't Stop Believing, I'm going to have to put there. You go anywhere, that song comes on the jukebox, and everybody in the bar is going, just a small town girl living in a lonely world.
Can
Everybody's singing it.
Because
What's that?
I'm going to cut you off for a second because I don't think that song was as popular as it was till The Sopranos made it more famous than it really was.
I disagree. I will say this. When that song came out, it actually wasn't the biggest song on that record because Open Arms was the big hit. Remember the ballad Open Arms? That was the biggest song on the Escape album. Don't Stop Believing had a much longer shelf life. And you would stand correct saying The Sopranos brought it back big time. And I would agree, but it doesn't change the impact of the song. So that's my one. Not necessarily in order, but that's my first pick. My second pick is going to be The Outfield, Your Love. I don't want to lose your love tonight. Any bar you go into, somebody's singing that song. Then Josie's on a vacation far away. Come
You did not tell me that I had to sing on this show. You know, there's singing coming out on me here.
Yeah, Aaron's the singer.
And then, so my third pick, I'm going to say, you said it, Phil, for the same reason. Bon Jovi, Living on a Prayer. Any bar, any given night, that song's coming on, everybody in the bar is, wow, we're halfway there.
And every DJ knows exactly to take the volume and turn it down right at that moment so the crowd can sing it without the music, and then he blasts the music back up. I mean, it's a given.
Yeah, I mean, so right there, those three I'm going to pick. I mean, and I think you might have nailed the fourth one, too, when you said Jump.
Yeah.
I'm going Van Halen Jump.
While you were talking, I did some research. I pulled up a few more that I absolutely love 80s songs. First off, I was on a podcast maybe 2 or 3 months ago, Tony Cotillo's Heat Ratio podcast, and we were talking about the Beastie Boys. Fight for Your Right. I mean, that's like an anthem for
that's what I'm saying. There's too many to pick.
Fight for Your Right was the 80s. Yeah, I got to throw that out there.
I agree.
I'm going to throw out DMX, Walk This Way. I mean, that's
you mean Run DMC with Aerosmith, Walk This Way.
Either any of them. I don't care. Any of them. You can throw any of the Walk This Ways out there. I'm going to go White Snake, Here I Go Again.
Of course, yeah.
Definitely got to be on a Mount Rushmore. And you got to go AC/DC.
Back in Black, Shook Me All Night Long.
You got to. Again, played in every bar, anytime.
Shook Me All Night Long, definitely.
At least every bar in Delco was playing that.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. Anyway, Phil, since you are the host of the All About the Birds podcast, I have to ask, what are your thoughts on the Carson Wentz trade?
And I just talked about that for 15 minutes on somebody else's podcast.
I knew it was coming.
All the thoughts are right there, fresh in my head. Man,
I knew it.
As a Carson Wentz fan, it sucks because I love Carson Wentz. And, you know, I really thought he was the future of this team. I really did. I thought we were going to win another Super Bowl with him. I thought he was an MVP caliber candidate and stuff like that. But it had happened. There was no way around the situation. You could not have fixed him and Howie Roseman's, relationship. It just wasn't happening. So, you got the best return that you possibly could have gotten considering the situation. And it's extremely unfortunate. It really is. I mean, Howie, Doug, Carson, the three of them fought, and Howie won the celebrity death match. He got his way over the other two.
What do you think of Jalen Hurts? What do you think?
I mean, is he the future of the team? That's still to be determined.
What do you think?
No, there's no way you could tell he's the future yet after 3.5 games.
Agreed.
But I will tell you this, and I've paid close attention to his college career. Before the Eagles drafted him, I had him higher on my draft board than a lot of other people because I did like his talent coming out of Oklahoma. I thought he got a raw deal at Alabama. I hate when a player in any sport loses their job to injury, and he got hurt. Tua took over. The rest is history. We all know Tua was, the 6th pick overall. So there's that and all. But I really think Jalen Hurts can be an NFL starting quarterback. It's just unfortunate that he had to take it away from, Carson Wentz. So if they develop him enough, if they build around him properly, if Nick Sirianni has the right system in place for him, and maximizes his talent, I think he could be a very good quarterback in this league.
It'll be interesting as a Dolphin fan. We're going to be tied by the hip the next few years with Hurts and Tua.
Yeah, absolutely.
The comparisons are going to be there.
I don't know about you guys, but I always feel bad in every sport. When somebody gets hurt, they're playing at a high level, they get hurt, and their backup plays at a high level so they don't get their job back. I feel it's very unfortunate.
It's called getting Wally pipped. As a baseball fan, that's what I call it.
I love it.
Yeah, well, Aaron and I were actually discussing that a couple of weeks back about Tua and Hurts, and it's interesting. I'm kind of in the same boat. I feel that Jalen Hurts is the guy that, obviously many people, like you just said, you had him higher on your draft board. I'm with you. He was higher on my board as well, and I was honestly. My opinion on Hurts is that if he could just work on his arm strength, which I think that's something that you can work on, because he's obviously training really hard with this new trainer. I forget the guy's name, Avery something, but he's a high class trainer of quarterbacks, and he's groomed many of the superstars that we know today. And Hurts is working with that guy, and I'm telling you, like, that's a talent that you can develop. It's not something that, you necessarily have to have mastered coming out of college. So I think if he can do that, he could be elite because he has. They say his skills as far as his reading ability and ability to read defenses and what he sees on the field is absolutely, second to none. I mean, so to me, he's the kind of guy that honestly, yes, he went in the second round, but he could very well be one of the better ones in that draft. I mean, it wouldn't shock me. And once again, I know Burrow got hurt, so it's kind of hard to say that, he's a buck. I mean, he tore his ACL his first year. I mean, that's a terrible injury. But, as far as Burrow, he also was playing when he was in college. Look at all the talent that he had around him. So obviously he was good. So I guess the point that I'm making is it's not always the quarterback that's quote unquote picked to come out first that actually ends up being the best of the class.
But on that thought process, anybody that's picked first, second, or third in a draft, they're all going to go to bad teams anyway. So you kind of, they're all set up technically to fail at first. Jalen Hurts came into a good situation. Hypothetically, we were supposed to be a really good team last year. We weren't a 4-win team on paper going into the season. So he was in a situation where he could have learned. But Carson obviously did not handle the situation well enough, and he fell apart as a person and as a football player. So, Jalen Hurts is probably being thrust into the spotlight a little sooner than he should be, but he's got the skill set to succeed for sure.
Well, let's look no further than the 2012 NFL draft. Andrew Luck went number 1, right? Mm-hmm. RG3 went number 2. I think Ryan Tannehill went 5. And what did Russell Wilson go? 8, I believe. I could be wrong.
Russell Wilson went in the third round.
Okay, third round. There you go. I couldn't remember, but see what I'm saying? Who's the best out of that draft? Russell Wilson. I don't think any of us would argue that right now. Maybe and then Kirk second would be Tannehill.
Oh, see, Kirk Cousins maybe? Didn't Kirk Cousins go to the Redskins drafted 2 quarterbacks that year?
Yeah, Cousins might have been. I said, I just kind of pulled this out of my ass really quick.
Think about how bad the situation was in Philly drafting Jalen Hurts with Carson Wentz. Can you imagine being RG3 being taken 2 overall and they draft another quarterback in that exact same draft? I mean, that set him up mentally to fail right away.
That's crazy. But I guess the point I'm making is you don't necessarily have to be the top draft pick. I mean, look at what Russell Wilson has accomplished. And I remember the Dolphins were crucified for drafting Tannehill 5th. Now I wish he was in Miami.
Yeah. I actually have always been a big Ryan Tannehill fan. People often don't remember that he didn't even start playing quarterback till like his second year of college.
That's what I always say. Yeah. I mean, he was learning when the Dolphins drafted Tannehill, he was learning the position in the NFL, and he's had a very successful career. Absolutely. And he's a guy that could have a Hall of Fame career if he continues this trajectory the next 5-10 years.
Pump the brakes on the Hall of Fame.
I get it. I'm saying
a little too.
Of course. But I'm saying you get what I'm saying. I mean, anything's possible. Andrew Luck, Joe Burrow could be the next Andrew Luck. A guy that's injury prone, doesn't last long in the league. Who knows, You
got to look. I mean, and what you're getting at, you look at, Aaron Rodgers. He got drafted into the right situation. He didn't have to step right in. They still had Brett Favre. He got time to learn, adjust to the NFL and stuff like that. And he's obviously had an MVP, a Hall of Fame career.
Mahomes is another one. Look what Alex Smith did with that offense.
Yeah.
Think about it.
You get put in the right situation, any quarterback could succeed. Problem is the Eagles the right situation for Jalen Hurts? I think that's the bigger question than can Jalen Hurts be a good quarterback? Is the situation right for him here in Philly?
What I can say is the situation wasn't right for Wentz.
No, it wasn't.
I think we can all agree on that.
Absolutely.
The bottom line is,
no doubt,
whether or not Jalen Hurts is going to be the guy, I think that the time had come where there was no future for Wentz in Philly. And unfortunate as that may be, whether you want to blame the fan base, you want to blame the Eagles, whatever it is, it wasn't going to work. There was just too much working against Carson Wentz. It was always going to be second guessing. Mm-hmm. I mean, once they drafted Jalen Hurts, the shadow was there looking over his shoulder. It was just he was set up to fail. He needed to change the scenery, and he might resurrect his career and be awesome in Indy. And you know what? That doesn't mean he would have worked out in Philly. That's my take on it.
Indy's 24-1 to win the Super Bowl next year. So I'm going to throw a couple bucks at that just because of my Carson right there.
That's a good bet, yeah.
Definitely got to hit that bet up.
I'm a degenerate gambler. I'm sorry. I can't help myself.
I'm more of a fantasy guy.
I'm a degenerate fan. I've got 5 fantasy golf lineups going right now for the week. So,
Yep. So, you said you're in all sports. Obviously, you're a Phillies fan, Phil.
Absolutely. My first tattoo was a Phillies tattoo.
Okay, cool. So, how do you think the Phillies are going to be this season?
Does that sigh does that answer it right there?
Okay.
No,
okay.
I mean, I think they've got potential. I thought they had potential last year as well. It's going to come down to pitching. It's going to come down to that 3rd, 4th, 5th spot in the rotation. Zach Eflin, Chase Anderson, Matt Moore, Vince Velasquez, whoever rounds out the rotation. Can they be consistent? A lot of people love Zach Eflin. I am not as high on Zach Eflin as most people are. I think he's proven that he is exactly what he is, a 5th starter at best. He's going to be needed to be a 3rd starter this year. Can he do it? I don't know. I'm hesitant to believe that. The bullpen, again, they brought in Archie Bradley. They made some minor adjustments to that bullpen. Again, can they stay healthy? I mean, last year, I think at one point last year, towards the end of the year, it was statistically the worst bullpen ERA since like 1894 in Major League history.
Brutal.
That's how bad they're both. So it can't be that bad. So obviously, it's got to get a little bit better. I think the over-under wins was 81.5. It's a number I will not bet because I kind of think that that's about what they are. They're about a 500 team this year. Now, if everything goes perfect, Zach Eflin wins 12, 13 games. Bryce Harper has an MVP season. Rhys Hoskins goes back to his rookie form. If all those things go perfectly, I still only think they're an 85, 86 win team.
Okay. So who do you pick to win the NL East?
It's probably going to come down to the Braves and the Phillies. I think the NFC East is the Braves, the Phillies, the Mets. They made a lot of big moves, the Mets, but they're still the Mets, so they'll probably all backfire.
I'm a Mets fan, Phil.
I didn't know that. Sorry.
Yes,
my first Phillies game ever was at the Vet. It was a Phillies-Mets game in 1986. First Phillies game. Nice. I still remember it to this day. They won the game, the Phillies, not the Mets. So I think literally all 4 of the teams at the top of the division are so evenly close. I don't think one team's going to run away and win 90, 92 games. I think 87 wins the division. And it could be the Braves. It could be the Mets. It could be the Phillies, honestly, if everything goes right. But it's probably going to come down to the Braves and the Mets.
I'm not saying this because I'm a Mets fan. I honestly think the Mets are going to win the division this year. I think they've underachieved the last few years. I think it's going to come down to the Mets and Braves.
Yeah.
But I agree with you.
Their pitching stay healthy.
Well, I think the Mets are in a very good position because they have DeGrom. They've made some additions. They have Stroman. And I think the wild card here is that you're going to get a Syndergaard back late.
So he is projected to come back?
Yeah, mid-season.
Okay.
He's mid-season. And they have Dave Peterson. They have Yamamoto. They have a lot of guys, competing for that 5th spot. And I just think getting Lindor there, I just think the Mets lineup is deep.
It absolutely is. But again,
you got Alonso Smith,
as a Mets fan, you have to be able to admit that Mets make these big splashy moves and they don't seem to work out very often for the Mets.
Well, the one thing I will say, I have more confidence than I've ever had just because of Steve Cohen having taken over the team.
Absolutely. It makes a big deal having an owner that's willing to spend, but spend in the right places like that. I think
it's a cultural shift.
Yeah. Didn't you guys have a GM or a coach that got in trouble for something?
Yeah, Jared Porter. He was on the job for about a month.
Got rid of him right away. Former Mets might have just, swept that under the rug or something like that.
But speaking of former Mets, how about former Mets manager Mickey Callaway, Jay? And he's the former Indians pitching coach. He has all these women coming out now accusing him of sexual misconduct. It's crazy. And now there's stories coming out that the Indians knew about it. Swept it under the rug. I think they interviewed Terry Francona a couple days ago, and he said, right now is not the right time. So he didn't deny it. He just said right now is not the right time to talk about it. So there's a lot coming out of that. And meanwhile, the Angels haven't fired him yet. He's employed by the Angels as their pitching coach. They haven't fired him in an era of cancel culture. I'm shocked they haven't fired him yet.
Yeah, I'm really surprised he hasn't been fired.
But like you said, I mean, just the fact that this is all kind of tied to the Mets, even though none of it happened while they were with the Mets, speaks volumes about what you expect from the Mets, which is sad. In other words, Jared Porter, none of the accusations happened when he was employed by the Mets. Mickey Callaway, most of it was when he was employed by Cleveland, but then it continued with the Mets. And here the Mets are just why do they have to be in the news for these reasons? It's just the typical Mets.
Well,
what about you, Jay? Who do you got in the East?
I noticed you. I was just going to say you kind of sidestepped my opinion on this.
I'm listening.
Well, I'm going to drop a bombshell here because I'm kind of, and this is going to be a bold take, and I'm going to get a lot of heat for it. But I literally believe, although my brain says that the Mets are going to win the division, but I really believe in my heart of hearts that the Phillies are going to actually win the division.
Ooh, okay. I can't say it's impossible.
I am in the minority. I know when I say that. But I have this sneaky hunch that everything is going to come together this year, and the things that Phil was speaking about are actually going to come true. So therefore, to me, that's going to put the Phillies right there at about that 88, 89 win plateau. And I feel that in that division, I think they're going to be right there. And here's the reason why I believe that a lot of people are sleeping on the Phillies. Yes, the Mets do have the superior rotation. I'll give the Mets that. But I do believe that there's a couple things that I'm banking on with this prediction. I believe Rhys Hoskins is going to have I believe he's going to be right there for comeback player of the year. I really do. I think Rhys Hoskins, he went through a bad mental lapse, for about a year and a half. And of course, last year he was coming out of it and then he got hurt. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I believe that he's going to turn it around has a lot to do with the reason why I think a lot of these players are going to turn around. Not too many people are talking about the fact that the Phillies have changed their coaching staff from top to bottom, not just bringing in Joe Girardi, but they also did a lot of changes at their minor league level with their scouting department. And I believe that coaching in baseball goes a long way. And I think coaching in all sports goes a long way. But, we've seen that. We've seen the example even right across the street with the Eagles as far as how bad their wide receivers have been. And I believe a lot of that's coaching. So I think that the Phillies coaching improvements are going to help Rhys Hoskins tremendously. And I think that was part of the problem. Like, you had Gabe Kapler and you had these, that coaching staff telling, Rhys Hoskins, they had Rhys Hoskins going up there to take a walk. And they were saying, oh, that's better than, we're either a walk or a home run. No. Back to
Jay, welcome to baseball in 2020.
I got you.
Analytics, launch angles.
Yeah. And I am definitely not an analytics guy, and I think that
I want to study my home runs, RBIs, and average. I don't care about wins above replacements and FPI,
100%.
These stats, I don't even know what they mean.
It's not absurd.
I don't know the square root of 64, let alone what these things are. I'm an old school guy. I want old school stats. I want to study the back of my baseball card.
Yeah, you don't know how happy I was. You don't know how happy I was when Gabe Kapler was out of here because that guy was a jackass. Yes. So anyway, but not to make this longer than it needs to be, but I think Rhys Hoskins has comeback player of the year potential. I think Alec Boehm showed me more than enough last year, and honestly, he got ripped off he should have won Rookie of the Year.
I agree. He's a stud.
I don't know how you pick a relief pitcher to win Rookie of the Year. That's just especially when you only had 60-game season. Ridiculous. Okay. I think Alec Boehm, actually, to me, Alec Boehm reminds me of a guy that can hit 305, 310. He's not going to hit much more. He might hit around 25 to 30 home runs, but he's going to be that guy that's going to do everything. And his defense has gotten better. Now, I do think long term, I think he may be primed to go to first base, and they might move Rhys back to the outfield because Rhys did get some experience there. But we'll see about that. But anyway, I'm not looking at his defense. I'm looking at his offense, and I think he's going to be huge. I think bringing back obviously JT and Didi, that actually surprised me because I was that guy that sat there and said, John Middleton's going to fail us again. We're not going to sign these guys, and we're just going to be cheap like they had been talking about, all the reports were saying. So I think those guys have a huge year. And then this is my major key, Zach Wheeler. If Zach Wheeler can stay healthy, I think that Zach Wheeler, and I'm not saying he will, but I think he could vie for a Cy Young this year.
Guess what, Jay? I told you that Zach Wheeler was going to be a Cy Young candidate when you guys signed him. As a Mets fan, how upset I was that they didn't sign him. I think Zach Wheeler could be a 20-game winner this year with 240 strikeouts and a 2.45 ERA, for example.
Yeah, well, I think he's the ace of the staff. Don't get me wrong, I love Aaron Nola, but Aaron Nola to me is like a 2.
Aaron Nola's a great pitcher, but Zach Wheeler has lights out stuff.
Zach Wheeler is elite if he's healthy. He's just never been healthy.
He was a number 1 draft pick by the Giants. The Mets got him in the Beltran trade. I mean, he's got lights out stuff. When the Mets had Wheeler, Syndergaard, DeGrom, Matz, and Harvey, you had like 5 guys averaging like 98 miles an hour on their fastball with like knockout curveballs. I mean,
I think Wheeler and Nola, whoever the ace is, 1 or 2, it is what it is. But I think they're the perfect complement for each other at the top of a rotation. I agree. Our pitcher, and then I'm not comparing. Don't anybody watching the show. I am not comparing Aaron Nola to Greg Maddux, but Greg Maddux was that finesse pitcher. Aaron Nola is that finesse pitcher. Moves the ball around the strike zone. He uses his changeup and his curveball, and even his fastball moves more than most people's curveballs. So that's that perfect 1-2 punch in a rotation where you got one day the power pitcher, the next day the finesse guy keeps hitters off balance, keeps hitters, guessing what's coming. I think it's a great combo there, the two of them.
Oh, most definitely. You hit it on the head. If 2018 Aaron Nola arrives, then you're talking.
I think he got robbed of the Cy Young in 2018. I'll be honest.
That's what I mean. So if you have 2018 Nola and you have a Wheeler that wins close to 20 games, I think the Phillies do win the division. That's my opinion. So
address what you're saying for them to win the division, Jason. That's a lot of ifs.
All right. Well, I'm going to chime in, guys. Here's why I think the Mets are going to win the division. I'm going to elaborate more. You have an elite rotation. You have Jacob deGrom, the best pitcher in the game. Then they got Cookie Carrasco from the Indians. This is a guy that consistently with his eyes closed wins 15 games, an ERA 2.8, 3.2. It's very, very solid pitcher. You have Marcus Stroman, can be elite, but at his worst is again solid 15-game winner, 3.5 ERA. Then you have Taijuan Walker, who the Mets just got, who's like a number 1 pitcher that has had injuries that last year with Toronto came back to elite status. The Mets just basically stole him, picked him up, signed him. This is a guy that could be an ace pitcher, and he's the 4th starter right now, basically. And then you have David Peterson, who also could have won Rookie of the Year last year. He was another guy that was in that conversation. Right now, projected to be the 5th starter, but you also have Yamamoto and Joey Lucchesi, who they picked up as depth to be the 5th starter. So probably going to be Peterson. And then amongst all that, you have Noah Syndergaard, who's going to come back midseason. Mets are loaded with pitching. Then they have an elite bullpen. Edwin Diaz, for all his struggles, was elite again last year. You have Familia. You have Seth Lugo, who's been lights out. You have Drew Smith. I mean, the Mets bullpen is solid. Gesellman, Betances.
What's that? Steven Matz?
Steven Matz is in Toronto. Yeah.
Was he gone in the trade off with the Stroman?
Yeah. No. The Mets just got the Mets just released Steven Matz.
I want to
3 years ago.
That rotation in the Mets, because if you're going to say anything about the Phillies rotation, every single player outside the top guy has had injury history. So you're saying Taijuan Walker could be this, stud pitcher. He's a number 1 pitcher, but he hasn't been healthy.
I agreed, but keep in mind, he's projected to be the 4th starter. You have deGrom, who's never injured.
Carrasco. I mean, first off, when he got thrown in that Lindor deal, I was like, holy crap.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Who the hell is making that trade? That was a dumb move on the Indians' part. Great move on the Mets' part.
Yeah, and Carrasco's not injury prone.
Prospect, and he beat cancer. Exactly. He made a huge comeback. I root for him as a person.
Yeah.
Again, he's had injury issues as well in his career. I don't think
not too much though. I mean, he's been a model of consistency if you look at his career. And again, now we're just getting into the lineup though. You have Pete Alonso, who last year in an off year in a 60-game season, if you prorate it out to 162 games, still was on a 45 homer, 120 RBI pace. Dom Smith is the wild card here. Dom Smith is the far superior defensive first baseman who's playing the outfield just because Pete Alonso isn't athletic enough to play anywhere else. But Dom Smith's the guy that could actually hit 320, 330 with 35 homers, 120 RBI, and was actually like a top prospect. Pete Alonso wasn't a top prospect. He was a guy with no position that had a ton of power. Now you've got both of these guys in the lineup. You have Michael Conforto, another guy that's like an MVP caliber player when he's healthy. Here's another guy, Jeff McNeil. This guy hits 330 with his eyes closed and doesn't strike out. I have not seen a Mets lineup this deep, maybe ever. I'm being honest with you. Yeah, and then we got Lindor, like you just said.
Oh, did you forget about that?
I actually did. I'm thinking of the guys that have been here. So I mean, I have a lot of reasons to be excited for this Mets team. That being said, the Braves are elite. I mean, they have a lot of talent. Honestly, the worst team in the division is going to be Washington. I mean, they've lost too much. They still have the
Marlins,
Strasburg. All the Marlins are going to be. I forgot. Of course, I forget the Marlins.
They're a AAA team, right?
Yeah, they're a AAA.
Can I change the subject for a half a second here, guys?
Sure.
Because you brought up with Pete Alonso not being athletic enough to play the field. You know, Jason, you brought up Rhys Hoskins. You know, eventually moving Bohm to first, and Hoskins, where's he go? You know, last year with the shortened season, the DH was in the whole league, and I brought this up on Twitter this past week that they decided not to have the DH. And I'm an old school guy. I was 100% against the DH being brought into the NL. But after last year, and now seeing that it's not going to be around, I'm kind of starting to change my opinion on it because it helps teams. It helps pitcher. There's a lot to thought. I would love your guys' thoughts on should the DH, after seeing it last year, be made league-wide.
Well, Phil, you may have noticed I actually commented on your tweet.
Did you?
And
so many people commented. I don't remember who commented on it.
And guess what? I am in the 100% same boat you are. And Jay will tell you, I'm a purist. That's why I'm a National League fan. I'm like you. I want to see the batting average, home run, RBI, run bases. I'm old school, stolen bases. I don't care about whip, bip, this, that, and the other thing. Bottom line is same thing with the DH. I never wanted it in the National League. That being said, selfishly, probably for the same reasons as you, I've changed my mind. And case in point, the example I just brought up, it's easier for the Mets to have Dom Smith and Pete Alonso in the lineup with the DH.
It also extends players' careers. There's a lot of great players that their careers come to an end because they can't play the field anymore. They could still swing the stick, and they just can't, field anymore. Their knees, whether it's their knees. Ryan Howard's career might have been extended a little bit longer, if the DH was available in the NL. Because he could still swing and hit for home runs, but a guy like him isn't going to be a pinch hitter. So,
now you're getting into a reason why I didn't like the DH. See, I always thought that if the fact that it extended careers was part of my argument against it, because my feeling was always, well, if you're not good enough to play the field anymore, you're not good enough to be in Major League Baseball.
That was my opinion too. But
exactly.
Now I'm kind of, because of seeing it last year and what it does to lineups, I think it makes a difference.
Well, I'll tell you this too. The game has just gotten younger. For example, I think the oldest rostered Met might be Carrasco at like 34 years old, if he's even that old. There's nobody older than like 33, 34 years old in the Mets. And if you look around Major League Baseball, that's become more of a thing. Like Jose Reyes a couple years ago at the age of 35 couldn't get a job. Guys used to be playing when they were 45. Outside of Bartolo Colon and maybe a couple of the guys, you don't see that anymore. The league has gotten younger. So that's another reason, like the DH isn't really having an effect like it used to where guys were playing until they're 45 years old. The bottom line is I'm just kind of like acknowledging that the game is changing. I have to accept it. I hate the fact that nobody gets complete games anymore, but I can't change it. So I have to learn to live with it. So if I'm going to learn to live with it and it's going to help my team have Alonso and Smith in the lineup, I'm all for it at this fucking point. It's like if you can't beat them, join them, I guess. That's where I'm at, What about you, Jay? Where are you at with this?
Well, it's funny because I think we finally all three agree on something.
That's good. That's a positive.
Because I most definitely feel that the DH should be, around. And I also, like both of you, used to hate it. So I think we all three agree And for the same reasons, for the selfish reasons that I want to see every player be able to, come up to the plate and, be used in that role, as opposed to having to, make roles for players or move them out of position or, have platoons. Although I will say my favorite platoon was the 93 Phillies that probably used the platoon players better than any team that I've ever remembered.
There's multiple players going on that team.
Well, I guess we'll go to a little diversion since you brought it up, Jay. You guys are Phillies fans. I'm Mets fans. And the funniest thing is probably my two favorite single season teams are obviously the 86 Mets and, believe it or not, the 93 Phillies.
And what did they have in common?
Oh, Lenny Dykstra.
Wasn't he a guest on a podcast recently?
What's that? Yeah.
Wasn't he a guest on a podcast recently?
Yeah, right here on
God.
Sports and Metal, folks. Check it out. No, but sincerely, you brought up platoons, Jay. Look at the not only the 93 Phillies, but the 86 Mets. You had in center field the Mookie Wilson, Lenny Dykstra platoon. At third base, you had Ray Knight, but you also had Hojo plugging in. Hojo was plugging in at shortstop. Yeah, I mean, Hojo on the 86 Mets. Hojo was a role player on the 86 Mets. He played all over the place.
He was young, right?
Yeah, but they got him from the Tigers. But the point is, it was all platoons outside of like Gary Carter behind the plate, Keith Hernandez at first, Darryl Strawberry and right. Every other position was platooned. And the 93 Phillies were very similar. You had Eisenreich and Incaviglia getting plugged out in that outfield. The only guy who played every day, I think, in that outfield was Dykstra on the 93 team.
He was.
You had Crockett first.
Eisenreich. You had Milt Thompson, Pete Incaviglia. You had Mariano Duncan and Mariano Duncan
shortstop.
And Mickey Morandini at second base.
Yeah.
You had so many platoons on that team.
Yeah, and then back to the 86
Ricky Jordan would come in, and spell John Kruk.
Yeah, Ricky Jordan. Yeah, that's right.
And that's just like 86 Mets. You had even at second base, you had Wally Backman and Tim Tuffle. How many teams?
Philly for one short year.
Yes, he was. And think about it. How many teams, like, for example, you take Backman and Tuffle platooning at second, and they're both, like, all-time beloved, famous Mets. And the Phillies, similar thing. Like, how often do you have guys that were platooning that are beloved? Usually it's not like that. They were so important to those teams, but.
No, but that's why they were so lovable.
Yeah,
that's why everybody loved them.
And the other thing they both had in common, those two teams, is that they were rough and tumble, decadent. We're going to kick your ass.
Yeah.
And,
they never went home. They stayed in the locker room and drank till they passed out.
Beer swilling, partying, card playing.
Sleep on the trainer's table and roll off the trainer's table onto the field to play the game the next day.
Yep. The only difference was the 86 Mets, I think, were a little younger and brash in that sense. And the Phillies was like the same guys a few years later where they all grew mullets and had beer bellies.
The 93 Phillies, honestly, I mean, they were kind of lucky, to be honest with you. The Mets had some guys that were young and talented on that team, in platoon roles.
In the 86 team, yeah.
Sorry, 86 team, yeah, sorry. But the 93 Phillies, they were filled with a bunch of guys that Pete Incaviglia was a nobody. He had like 23 home runs for the Phillies that year. Milt Thompson, he was an okay player with the Cardinals before we got him, or the Reds, wherever he played. It wasn't anything. Dave Hollins hit 20-some home runs. Who the hell is Dave Hollins? You know what I mean?
And even Darren Daulton was like a 205 hitter for years with the Phillies until he found himself, or maybe something else found him.
Well,
that's brought it up on our podcast.
Right there. I think whatever found Darren Daulton found everybody that year on that team.
Yeah. Let's just say Lenny probably brought it into the clubhouse.
Very good possibility.
No, but sincerely, the Phillies were a fun team. It was like a beer league softball team, that 93 team. And I was at the vet constantly that season as a Mets fan. Mets sucked. They lost 105 games or something that year, 103 games in 93.
I mean, that team was just, you're right. I mean, it was just so exciting. And I brought this up on that podcast with Lenny because it was like almost like I couldn't believe how good they were that year. And I remember watching the playoff games with you, Aaron. And I'll never forget that game when they lost. It was, I believe it was game 4. It was a rain. I think it rained. It was like pouring rain. And I think they lost like 15-14. It was one of them like back and forth games. And I think I can't remember the third baseman. Was it Paul Molitor?
You're talking about the World Series game.
Was it Paul Molitor?
Yeah, it was Molitor. Yes.
It was, and he hit that home run, and I think in like the 7th or 8th inning, and the Phillies had went ahead, and then it was just like one of them back and forth. That whole series against Toronto, like honestly, I think obviously we know what happened. I mean, Mitch Williams, but if you really wanted to blame, a lot of people, there was kind of two segments of arguments. Some people blamed Mitch Williams, but then other people blamed Fregosi for even putting him in.
Yeah,
So,
you can blame the entire season, Fregosi over. I mean, Larry Anderson's arm was falling off. David West, his arm was attached by stitches. Mitch Williams had nothing left in the tank at that point. And honestly, the home run from Joe Carter, it wasn't an awful pitch.
It wasn't.
I mean, it was down and in.
And let's be fair, it was Game 6, not Game 7. So it's unfair to put it all on Mitch Williams.
Yeah,
it was Game 6. It wasn't Game 7.
Who said Game 7?
No, I'm just saying that.
Oh, I thought you said I'm like, I didn't say Game 7.
No, you didn't say that. I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah, I thought I said it.
No. I'm just saying.
I didn't pick up on that. Hey, the last podcast I did tonight, the guy that I was talking to, he's a Green Bay Packers fan, and we got into a little baseball talk for a little while. And he called. He brought up the 08 Phillies, and he said Mike Utley was a really key piece to that team. So I would have heard you say 7-game series in '93.
You would have known
on it and wrote it down in my book, and it would have been a mental note to get you on that all the time.
No. What I'm saying is it was unfair the way Mitch Williams was getting death threats and they were trying to run him out of town when they were already down in the series. Is what I'm saying. It wasn't like it was Game 7. It was Game 6. They still have to win Game 6 to get to Game 7.
They blew their load in the Braves series before that. That just getting to the World Series was a win for that squad.
Yeah, I brought it up on the Dykstra episode, Jay. You remember it? I don't know what it was. The Phillies were playing really well that spring, and for some reason, remember I said the Phillies are going to win that division in '93. I don't know if you remember that.
You did.
I did. Anyway, Phil, it was great having you on the show, man.
I'm game to come on anytime. This has been fun. We've covered a lot of different topics. I didn't get to call out Jason on his guitar, rock and roll guitar list that he did a few weeks ago.
That's fine. Let's talk about it.
No, you can cover that. No, if you want to wrap it up, we can wrap it up.
Oh no, we're not ready to wrap up.
But I wasn't calling out and having Santana too low on the list.
I didn't know about this.
Mentions to Santana.
If you got a beef with Jay, let's do it. Bring it.
Did you have Carlos Santana on your honorable mentions list?
I did.
Yeah, I think that's pretty disrespectful right there.
That's why it's called a list. Very subjective.
That's why it's subjective.
Let me tell you something. I've gone to a lot of concerts in my life, and one of the greatest shows I ever saw. First off, it was at the Vet, which the Vet sound system was an absolute disaster. I mean. Nobody made that sound system sound great. But so I think it was in '99, Dave Matthews did a 3-day stop at the Vet, but his opening act was Santana. And Santana's opening act was The Roots.
Love The Roots.
Followed by Santana, followed by Dave Matthews. I know Dave Matthews is a hit or miss topic for people. And all. I was in college. Everybody loved Dave Matthews if you were in college at the time. But when all 3 bands came out on stage for the encore, for the entire 20 minutes, they did Watchtower with Santana doing the Jimi Hendrix electric version of it, with the Roots doing their thing, and then the Dave Matthews Band doing their thing. I've been to probably 100 different concerts. That 20-minute segment encore there was probably the greatest live performance I've ever seen. And that made me say Carlos Santana. I already loved him, but Carlos Santana is up there in my top 5 guitarists because of that 120-minute live segment I saw.
That's a great story, man. That's awesome.
We went and scalped tickets to the next night. We went to the first night's show, and we scalped tickets to the next night. And we were so disappointed when Santana and the Roots didn't come out for the encore at the end of the show. We only went back to see all 3 groups together. That was the only reason to go to the second show, and they didn't do it. And I was so pissed off.
So disappointed.
Yeah.
So that's also what made it great the night you saw it, because if it was every night, it wouldn't have been as unique.
Back then you were burning CDs and stuff like that. I remember going to some little CD store. I was at my freshman year of college was at Drexel, then I transferred out. But I found there was a little tiny CD store somewhere in Philly near Drexel. It was like a 200 square foot little hut, and they had a burned CD from that concert, and I still have that CD. It's scratched up like hell, and it doesn't play, or you might be able to get like 1 minute of actual music off of it. But I had to buy it just because it had the encore with all three bands playing Watchtower. Greatest music moment of my career right there.
That's awesome. Well, Carlos Santana is a great player. I won't dispute that.
You may have dissuaded me a little bit by that story, but that just shows you that having the passion that you get from hearing certain things, that's where you get your opinion on things. Because obviously I've never seen Santana live, so I didn't have that same experience, but there might be some guys that I saw live that you didn't, and that might be why I have them there.
And that's why I always encourage people to see bands live, because you can listen to. And my dad taught me about listening to records, and even though tapes were around and CDs, he still had his old record player and all his old albums and stuff like that. You got to see musicians live to really truly appreciate what kind of an artist they are, and all the people I've seen live, if I rank my favorite musicians of all time, every single one of them I've seen live. And they probably all were not in my top 5 at some point until I saw them live. Because live music just takes things to a different level.
Well, you guys just hit on 2 things, and Jay knows the one. That's why I really don't love making lists. Because even if I made my own list right now of, like, say, my top 10 favorite guitarists, in 10 minutes when I'm walking away, I'd be like, oh, I forgot so-and-so.
That's why I didn't want the Mount Rushmore
change.
Conversation.
What's that?
I didn't want to talk about the Mount Rushmore conversation.
For the same reason.
To name.
Yeah, like, exactly. It's like I can't do a list. I just can't do it. And then you just kind of hit on something, Phil, that's near and dear to me. And it's like, what sucks about music today and the kids just not experiencing what we did and generations prior did. Like, when I was a kid, and Jay knows, you would go to a record store when you heard your favorite band's album was coming out. You'd be waiting with bated breath for that record to come out, to go to the record store like the minute the store opened to get that record. And it wasn't like about a single. It was about, you wanted to go home. You wanted to, whether it was an album, a tape, or a CD, whatever the format was, but you wanted to open the packaging and you wanted to open it up and you wanted to listen to the whole album from front to back, staring at the artwork, reading all the liner notes and following along to every lyric. Because the songs were like, it was like, when listening to a whole record like that, it was like a journey into like the album, into the artist's headspace when they made that record. And the lyrics meant something, and it became like a story, and the artwork meant something, and it became like the soundtrack to your life. And that's why even in schools back then, all the groups, all the cliques, it was all based off of like the music they listened to. Like, you had your metalhead, you had your metalhead group, you had your burnouts, you had your goth kids, you had your hip hoppers. You had your like earthy Grateful Dead guys. Whatever it was all based on the music that they listened to and that passion that they had. And that's what sucks today. You look at any junior high or high school, every kid is wearing like the same clothes. It's almost like a uniform. Like, there's no diversity because kids, all they do is download singles. They don't download anything. They just stream it on YouTube. They don't even buy iTunes now. It's all about like some hip hopper in his bedroom putting a YouTube video out.
I don't remember what song or what musician it was. But the greatest thing I remember, I was probably 10 or 12, and I got a tape or whatever it was, and there was a hidden track at the end of it. And I'm just like, this is what you buy a whole album for, because there's a hidden track that the musicians didn't even tell you was on there, and it's there. It's the great moments. And my dad passed away when I was pretty young, and I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot about sports and passion on sports, but I also learned a lot about music. And I used to make fun of him when I was a little kid. Like, he was listening to Smokey Robinson or Patti LaBelle. Then he'd be listening to Alabama. Then he'd be listening to Aerosmith. And I'd be like, dude, you listen to such weird music. Why can't we just listen to rock and roll, He's like, you got to appreciate it all. And now I look back, I'm like, he basically set the foundation on who I am as a music person now.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, I mean, that's what was so great about like when you could experience albums and artists for what they were, and it's like it all, everybody was like influenced by what they listened to. It defined who you were as much as anything. You think you hear a song that you heard at a given moment when you were growing up, the song brings you back to that time.
Absolutely.
That's what music means to me. That's what music means to me.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because not to go back to that Mount Rushmore discussion, but I guess since we started with it, we might as well kind of close out with it. But that was part of the reason why I had my number one being Beat It. Because for me, that song represented not only the best possibly entertainer of all time, but it had possibly, I mean, obviously, I had Jimi Hendrix number one on the Guitar Gods, but Eddie Van Halen was right there at number two. And that song had both of them on it.
I agree.
I mean, for me, that song, like every time I hear that song, I literally get goosebumps. As a matter of fact, after I did the tweet, I listened to that song like 5 times in a row in my car while I had parked in my driveway. And I just listened to it 5 times in a row. And every time I listened to it, I got goosebumps and I felt like this weird feeling came over me. It's just because that song, not only does it represent that for me, it's just unbelievable. Like just the whole song, how it comes together. So for me, that's why I picked that.
If I may add to that, Jay, I agree with you. I think if you're going to take a song that defines, that encapsulates a moment in time, Beat It is as good as any because, like you said, you have the biggest artist of all time. That song is on his biggest album and the biggest album of all time. You have arguably the greatest guitar player of all time coming out with their biggest album at the time, Jump. I mean, 1984, which had Jump and Panama and everything on it, 1984. Van Halen was at the top of the world when Thriller came out. And the only reason 1984 didn't go to number one was because Michael Jackson's Thriller came out at the same time. So you had Thriller at number one, you had Van Halen 1984 at number two, and then you had them playing on the same track. It defined the time. I mean, there was no bigger bands or artists at the time than Van Halen and Michael Jackson. And then just to add to that, how the pop culture moment was so big, the coolest scene in the Back to the Future trilogy is when Michael J. Fox goes on stage at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance with the band, and they play Earth Angel or whatever, and then he wants to play something else. He goes, "All right, man, hit me, key of B, whatever." And then he starts jamming out, and he starts doing all the Eddie Van Halen moves on the stage, playing Johnny B. Good. And he's doing the two-hand tapping, and all of a sudden everybody in the dance is staring at him like he's lost his mind. And he realizes it, and he looks up, he goes, "You kids aren't ready for that yet. You guys aren't ready for that yet, but your kids are going to love it." That was a moment in time that encapsulates. Like, you could take Beat It and that scene in Back to the Future, and it just brings me back to that whole period. And the song Beat It encapsulates it. I mean, everything about it. So I'm with you on that, dude.
And that's what my dad taught me was like, look, I don't like Michael Jackson's style of music, but I appreciate the fact that he is the GOAT. He is the legend. He would out of pop music. I mean, there's nobody better. And whether you like somebody or not, you better be able to appreciate it if they are a GOAT. Otherwise, you're not, whether it's a sports athlete like Tom Brady being the greatest quarterback, you might hate him, but he's the greatest quarterback. Michael Jackson, greatest pop artist of all time. You might not like him, but you better appreciate it because you might never in your lifetime see somebody that good ever again.
Yeah. And Beat It was a metal song since it's just sports and metal. For all intents and purposes, right, Jay?
Yeah, it kind of is. We can call it that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's my favorite Eddie Van Halen solo
It's
that he ever laid.
mine.
And he laid it down like on the spot. In fact, it's awesome. Like when Michael Jackson and Ted Templeton were working on Beat It in the studio, it didn't have a bridge to solo over. It just had the da-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na. So Eddie came into the studio and they wanted him to put his solo down, and he's like, "I can't solo over this." So he designed the bridge where it goes da-da-na, 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 and then Eddie just came in and did that. And I think that's the coolest part about it. He basically just went in the studio without any preparation and just laid that thing down in a couple minutes, and it's legendary. It's gold. And to me, it's Eddie's best solo. So
it might be my favorite solo. Yep. It might be my favorite solo, period, not just Eddie.
Dude. It's an amazing solo. It really is. It encapsulates everything about the guy, Eddie Van Halen. Rest in peace, Eddie. We love you, Eddie. So anyway, so this will be the real deal, Phil. Thank you for joining us.
Sorry, I just made you go on a 10-minute.
I'm glad because some of the best.
Dude, we could talk for hours with you. It's awesome.
Yeah,
we love having you.
Best content tonight was the last 10 minutes of the show. So I want to thank you, Phil. That was a great show. We hope to have you again on the show. Jay, you have anything to add?
No, I'm appreciative to you, Phil. I really appreciate everything you've done for me and for us for the podcast. And I love watching you guys and listening to you guys. And your co-hosts, they also have some great shows themselves. And why don't you remind everybody?
I'll shout out I just want to say thank you. You guys are too kind. You say way too kind of stuff. We're just you guys just a little bit further ahead. We're nobody special. I've been told online I'm a nobody by plenty of people, but we are the All About the Birds network and All About the Birds team. AAT Birds on Twitter. We're live every Wednesday at 9:15 with our main podcast live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. And I do my golf show. I got to shout my golf show out. If there's one person listening that likes golf, Fairway to Heaven, Tuesdays at 9:00. We basically talk gambling and fantasy golf because everybody forgets once fantasy football season and gambling's over for football, you can still make money the rest of the year. You just got to pay attention to golf. And me and my partner, Jason, we've kind of got a system. We've called 3 of the last 4 outright winners as bets, and we win on 75% of our lineups for gambling or for fantasy. So if you want to make some money, follow that show. But the whole All About the Birds team, we're all about all sports, AAT Birds. That's where you find us. And we just appreciate it. I mean, we're coming up on a year. We've only been doing it for a year. And we appreciate people like you guys that have supported us through this journey this year because it's been a rough year. But, I think we got something growing, something brewing there at All About the Birds.
We appreciate the support.
Most definitely.
Yep. Anyway, check out All About the Birds. Thank you, Phil. It's been a great show. Everybody, hope you enjoyed it. Rock on.
Peace out.